The new millennium had not just dawned. It had erupted, vibrant and relentlessly digital, carrying with it a profound shift in how the world consumed spectacle. The flickering black and white sets of David's childhood were now relics, replaced by sleek, high-definition screens that beamed every bead of sweat, every defiant glance, into every corner of the planet with startling clarity. The FIFA World Cup wasn't just big anymore. It was gargantuan, a colossal enterprise that transcended mere sport to become a dizzying, month-long tapestry of corporate power, national ambition, and for some a troubling dance with controversy. The pure, unadulterated passion that had birthed it still burned fiercely in the hearts of billions, but that raw human emotion was now meticulously encased in a shimmering, undeniably restrictive golden cage of commercialization. Take South Korea and Japan, co-hosts in 2002. It was a moment of unprecedented grandeur, the first World Cup ever held on Asian soil, a vibrant testament to the tournament's truly global reach. The stadiums were architectural marvels, humming with futuristic promise. The organization was seamless, almost flawlessly executed, a masterclass in logistics. Alex, a young marketing manager for a major global sponsor, stood in a bustling fan zone in Seoul, his heart thrumming with the crowd's energy. He watched as his company's logo, emblazoned on giant screens, seemed to pulsate with the collective joy. "This is it, isn't it?" he muttered to a colleague, a wide grin spreading across his face. This is what global reach looks like. The logos of global sponsors were no longer just visible. They were utterly pervasive. They were splashed across every broadcast, woven into every vibrant fan zone, stitched onto every piece of official merchandise. Coca-Cola, Adidas, Visa, these weren't just advertisers. They were deeply ingrained partners, their corporate identities inextricably intertwined with the very fabric of the World Cup experience. This was the undisputed era of the commercial juggernaut. FIFA had perfected the art of leveraging the World Cup's immense brand equity, turning raw passion into profit. Broadcasting rights became a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, with media giants fiercely bidding for the eyes of half the planet. This unprecedented capital fueled bigger tournaments and larger prize pools, attracting top talent and even more viewers, creating a beautiful, self-reinforcing economic cycle. But as the money grew, so did the stakes, and the controversies began to fester. The selection of host nations, once a straightforward process, became a battleground of political influence and colossal economic promises. The glittering allure of hosting promised immense global prestige and a deluge of tourist dollars. It suggested new jobs and state-of-the-art infrastructure that would uplift an entire nation, transforming fleeting moments of joy into astronomical revenue streams. Consider the emotionally charged journey to South Africa 2010. The excitement across the continent was palpable, almost electric. For the first time, the World Cup was coming to Africa, a powerful, symbolic moment of hope, progress, and unity. For a local street vendor like Saifo, who had watched his country's transformation from apartheid, the World Cup promised everything. He'd invested his meager savings into extra flags, vuvuzelas, and his mama's renowned homemade snacks, dreaming of bustling crowds and overflowing pockets. "This is it, mama," he'd told his elderly mother, his voice brimming with fervent hope, pointing to the gleaming new stadium on their small television. "The world is coming to us. We will prosper." He believed in the macroeconomic theory of event tourism. This mega event would pump billions into the local economy, create jobs, and leave lasting infrastructure. Hotels were booked solid, new roads were laid, airports expanded. Official figures projected billions in benefit and thousands of jobs created. But then came the first twist, as subtle as a whisper but cutting deep, the realization that the golden cage had very specific rules, enforced with cold precision. Saifo learned that only official vendors, massive corporations with exclusive licenses, were allowed to sell inside the designated fan zones and stadium perimeters. His small stall, just outside the official boundary, saw a trickle of tourists, but the vast majority of consumer dollars flowed directly into the coffers of the global brands. They promised legacy for everyone, Saifo muttered to his mama one evening, watching the distant lights of a vibrant, exclusive fan fest. "When these big ones get to truly dance." His dreams of a fortune dwindled to a modest gain. His mama, a woman who had seen too many promises fade, nodded slowly. "It's a big party, son," she said, her gaze wistful as she watched the glittering fan zones from the humble distance of their township home. "But the dance floor feels very far away for some of us who just stand on the outside looking in." The communication from FIFA highlighted unity and legacy, but the ground-level experience for many was a more nuanced, sometimes heartbreaking, reality. Some of the newly built stadiums, costing hundreds of millions, would later become white elephants, struggling to find post-tournament use and accumulating debt, a burden rather than a blessing for the local government. The economic multiplier effect, where money circulates and grows locally, was limited. Much of the generated wealth flowed out to international corporations and contractors. Then came Brazil 2014. Here, the growing dissonance between the World Cup's polished exterior and a nation's internal struggles erupted onto the global stage. Brazil, a nation synonymous with football passion, seemed a natural host, promising a carnival of unparalleled football. Yet the jubilant atmosphere inside the stadiums was fiercely punctuated by widespread, often violent, street protests that raged outside. Millions of Brazilians, passionate about football, were simultaneously enraged by the billions spent on stadiums while their struggling public services, healthcare, education, transport languished in neglect. This was a direct, visceral challenge to FIFA's brand management. They build these empty palaces while our hospitals crumble, while our schools lack basic supplies, while our buses are late and expensive, shouted a young student named Donna, her face painted with a defiant message, her voice hoarse from hours of protest. She embodied the profound frustration of a populace that felt their collective identity and resources were being shamelessly exploited. This World Cup is not for us. It's for FIFA and the politicians. She screamed, her words echoing the sentiments of millions across Brazil. This was a harsh lesson in the complexities of soft power. While Brazil hoped to project an image of a vibrant, capable nation, the persistent, highly visible protests inadvertently highlighted deep-seated underlying socio-economic tensions and governmental failures. And this was the second twist, a brutal revelation for the corporate world. Money, it turned out, couldn't buy absolute silence or universal goodwill. Alex, the marketing manager from 2002, now a seasoned PR executive, watched the live footage from Brazil in stunned disbelief. "Get the crisis team on the line now." He barked into his phone, his voice strained. "We need a new statement, something about unity, about supporting the local people." But his words felt hollow as the images of police clashes and burning barricades flashed across the screens, directly undermining the carefully crafted narrative of joy and celebration by sponsors like Coca-Cola and Visa. The World Cup brand, once almost untouchable, was now openly scrutinized, its image fracturing under the weight of its own commercial ambition. The sheer scale of the protests proved that even the biggest brands couldn't always control the story. By Russia 2018, the controversies broadened further, becoming inextricably intertwined with complex geopolitical concerns and highly publicized human rights records. The tournament itself was meticulously organized, the stadiums undeniably impressive, the logistical execution remarkably smooth, a testament to Russia's vast resources and centralized planning. Yet the pervasive shadow of international politics loomed large. Liam, a dedicated football fan in Manchester, found himself conflicted. He yearned to celebrate every goal, every victory, but nagging questions about the host nation's policies and accusations of human rights abuses made the celebrations feel slightly hollow. "It's just a bit much, isn't it?" He sighed to his friend after a match, gesturing at the glittering stadium on his screen. "All this perfection, but you know what's going on behind the scenes." This was the third twist, a chilling realization. The beautiful game was now undeniably entangled in the world of sports washing. The flawless execution, the grand spectacle, the immense investment by the host nation, it wasn't just about football. It was, for some, a calculated strategy to project an image of normalcy, strength, and hospitality onto a global stage, potentially distracting from other, more troubling narratives. FIFA, in its role as a global, supposedly apolitical organization, found itself navigating increasingly treacherous international waters. It desperately strove to maintain its image as a purely sporting body, but its every decision, particularly regarding host selection, was inherently tied to complex geopolitical landscapes. Its communication emphasized universal values of sportsmanship and unity, attempting to deflect criticism, but the growing chorus of international media scrutiny and human rights organizations forced a difficult, often unconvincing, balancing act. The World Cup's brand identity was no longer simply about football. It was irrevocably linked to profound questions of human rights, national governance, environmental responsibility, and the often unseen social costs of staging such monumental mega-events. The perception of the World Cup's brand trust began to erode among ethically conscious audiences, even if viewership numbers remained astronomically high. This transformative era, spanning from the early 2000s through the 2010s, solidified the World Cup as a true commercial juggernaut, a global phenomenon unlike any other. It demonstrated its incredible power to generate staggering revenue, attract a formidable roster of global sponsors, and drive massive, concentrated waves of tourism and economic activity. But with equal force, it also unveiled a darker, more complex side: the immense, often unsustainable pressures placed upon host nations, the unavoidable ethical dilemmas inherent in selecting hosts with questionable human rights records or fragile economies, and the constant, relentless battle to manage a brand that, for billions across the world, still represented pure, unadulterated passion. But for a growing number of critical voices, symbolized corporate greed, political compromise, and an alarming disregard for local populations. The golden cage had been meticulously built, shining brightly for the global cameras and corporate partners, its bars woven with threads of billions. But the persistent echoes of dissent and cries of injustice from within its very confines were growing steadily louder, setting the stage for an even more complex, ethically charged, and potentially turbulent future where the beautiful game would increasingly face questions far beyond the pitch.